And it's Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank here on WCCS AM 1160 and FM 101.1. And our interview with Kevin Cook is brought to you by Bradley's Book Outlet in the Indiana Mall. And Kevin is the author of the book Electric October, 7 World Series games, 6 lives, 5 minutes of fame that lasted forever. Let's say hello to Kevin Cook. Good morning.
Morning.
It's good to have you with us here today. And what a fascinating book. What a great idea for a book. Here we are at baseball playoff time, World Series time, and we go back to one of the great World Series of all time, the 1947 series. Explain to people the title Electric October.
Well, that comes from the fact that not only was it a remarkable, exciting matchup between the underdog Brooklyn Dodgers of Jackie Robinson and the mighty Yankees of Joe DiMaggio, but it was the first televised World Series. Now, what that meant was not households, but bar holds more than anything else. Most TVs were in bars or appliance stores. People would crowd around and watch the game on a screen the size of a toaster. Players are about an inch tall, and since there was only one stationary TV camera, they spend a lot of their time running right off the screen. So you kind of have to watch closely to figure out what's going on. Most people are still listening to the radio, and what they're listening to is what Joe DiMaggio called the most exciting World Series ever.
And one of the most exciting aspects of this, for me anyway, is this is really the beginning of the Dodger dynasty that turned into the 1950s, although the Yankees certainly wanted to contest that and did in such an amazing way. But the Dodgers players are burgeoning stars. The Yankees, they're pretty well established with a guy named DiMaggio and everything. And you focus on some wonderful characters in the game's history, and it's just amazing to get in touch again with Cookie Lavagetto, who was one of the great characters in this book. He really was a guy that it took one moment of a stellar baseball career and made absolutely the best of it that he could.
That's true, and one of the things that struck me about the 47 series was the way that these lesser-known players jumped out to play hero or to play GOAT. And if you have that moment in the series, it's going to affect the entire rest of your life. These are young men. In most cases, they're not even halfway through their lives yet when they're playing in the 47 World Series. But every day, the rest of their lives, they're going to reflect on the events of October of 47 and get free drinks and pats on the back if they were heroes, or in the case of Bill Bevins, you're going to spend the rest of your life known as the fellow who almost threw the first no-hitter in World Series history.
Bill Bevins, of course, and Cookie Lavagetto, they are tied together forever in baseball history, and it continued well after their careers were over. They seem to have found a way that they could put everything that happened in the 1947 World Series into perspective for the rest of their lives.
That's true, and in that way they presaged Ralph Branca and Bobby Thompson from a few years later from Thompson's shot heard round the world. If you are Cookie Lavagetto, who broke up the no-hitter with 2 outs in the 9th inning, then you're always going to be asked to pose with Bill Bevins, the fellow who almost threw that no-hitter. And it's a more pleasant task if you're Cookie, because you were the hero of that moment. And for Bevins, he was kind of grinding his teeth. He played along at old-timers games for the rest of their lives, at reunions, at anniversaries of Game 4 of 1947. That Electric October was something that they revisited really throughout the rest of their lives, and I think they knew that when time came for their obituaries to run, it's going to say something like, had key hit in 1947.
Kevin Cook is our guest. Electric October is the name of the book. 7 World Series games, 6 lives, 5 minutes of fame that lasted forever. Kevin, 2 of the most fascinating characters that it turned out for me in the book are the manager, who is such an amazing character in this game, of the Yankees, Bucky Harris, and Snuffy Sternweiss, whose story I knew of Snuffy Sternweiss. I didn't know the whole breadth of his story, and what an amazing life it was that he led, and such a tragic end.
It's true. I mean, his end turns out to be as unusual and bizarre as the 47 series itself. Snuffy Sternweiss, I couldn't help liking enormously. He's an altar boy from the Bronx who grew up hearing the cheers for Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, whose father was a policeman who turned out to be a crooked policeman, kicked off the force, and I think that had something to do with Snuffy Sternweiss as being the straightest of straight arrows, a nervous character, always fighting ulcers and upset stomachs. He worried that he wasn't accepted as a real Yankee. It was the 47 series in which he starred that really helped him to feel that he was a Yankee as much as DiMaggio and Rizzuto and some of the other stars of those days. And that's what Electric October is about as much as anything. It's about the human stories behind the baseball stories that are the ones that I found so fascinating. And as you say, Bucky Harris is certainly one of those who had a long career, starting out as a boy wonder manager in 1924 of the Washington Senators. Now it's 47, and he's managing the Yankees to yet another World Series title.
We can't talk about Electric October with also mentioning Al Gionfrido. Of course, and there's a great picture of Al Gionfrido on the day the Pirates traded him to Brooklyn. He's in his Pirates uniform, and you look in that face and you wonder if he knew that something was up and that he would soon be on his way to Brooklyn and a place in baseball history with one of the most amazing catches ever.
That's true. He was a soulful-looking young Pittsburgh Pirate when he was shipped to Brooklyn, and the reason Branch Rickey really wanted to make that trade was because there was $100,000 in cash, along with Gionfrido, that Al had to pack in a satchel and carry on the train and deliver to Branch Rickey when he got to New York City. Al then makes a miracle catch on Joe DiMaggio in Game 6 that really keeps the Dodgers alive so that they get a chance to play a Game 7. And for the rest of his life, he's going to get pats on the back and free drinks for being the man who robbed Joe DiMaggio.
And what an amazing picture that is for us to try to get a hold of. Him holding a big satchel full of cash, and he's wondering which is more valuable to Brooklyn, me as an outfielder or this bag of money?
I think he would have suspected that if the bag of money had walked in to greet Rickey, that Rickey would have had just as big a smile on his face.
The other characters in the book, just as fascinating. Bert Schotten, who didn't really have any plans to be the manager of the Dodgers in 1947, and basically he was called in from the managerial bullpen in order to take over the job, and didn't even know he was going to get that job when Branch Rickey summoned him to Brooklyn.
That's exactly right, and Bert Schotten had already vowed to his wife that he wasn't going to wear that baseball uniform anymore when he retired. He was, and still is, the last manager to manage in a business suit, which makes perfect sense to me. I swear I've always wondered in baseball why the portly 60-year-old men are in the dugout dressed as if they're going to go out and play third base. When, Buck Showalter isn't going to go out and pitch, and Joe Girardi, as good a catcher as he was, isn't going to catch for the Yankees in the ALCS. I think it makes more sense for the managers to dress in shirts and ties like Bert Schotten did. It would sure make you wonder if NBA coaches started wearing trunks and little jerseys.
Kevin, don't mess with my traditions, huh? I mean,
okay.
I mean, don't take it too far here this morning. The book, Electric October, 7 World Series games, 6 lives, 5 minutes of fame that lasted forever. Tell me about your sources. How did you track down, and really, how did you decide that this was the topic for this book?
I was fascinated by the collision between Robinson and DiMaggio, and the fact that it was the first televised World Series. And the more that you look at 1947, the more you really fall for the stories of the men who, like Gionfrido and Sternweiss and Lavagetto, who came off the bench, who came out of nowhere, who didn't have superstar careers to fall back on. So the whole rest of their lives, it's really going to be this one World Series, these moments, and how profoundly these moments changed the rest of their lives struck me enormously. And I was really lucky to get to know the families. And there's no greater pleasure when working on a book than looking at a box full of clippings or a big fat scrapbook, a crinkly scrapbook full of old yellow newspaper clippings. It makes me wonder how in the future we're going to write baseball books when we're going to have to just look back at Mike Trout's Twitter feed or something like that.
Just doesn't seem right, does it? Well,
not as interesting anyway.
You know, we've got Gionfrido, we've got Lavagetto, we've got DiMaggio. Just thank goodness for Italy, because they brought to us one great World Series back in 1947.
It was an amazing, yes, a remarkable time for the sons of Italian immigrants. Both DiMaggio's and Gionfrido's parents said, why are you wasting your time playing this boys' game, until the boys brought home their first professional paycheck.
Absolutely a tremendous job with the book, and I really recommend Electric October by Kevin Cook. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for a good talk and for taking the time to read the book.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Any baseball book, I'm up for it. Thank you, Kevin. Have a wonderful day.
You too.